Welcome to a very special edition of the RANT, because we've got two very highly esteemed guests. Hopefully the viewership this week will go through the roof.
Yeah.
John Walter, welcome back. Welcome back. It's been 12 months since you did a punters show, and this is your debut appearance on the RANT. And Snowy, good to have you as always. So Rosehill last Saturday, a typical midwinter's card. We had a slightly odd rail position at 6.5 metres, but Rosehill, I guess, is the jewel in the crown as far as Sydney racing is concerned. It's the solid, no-nonsense play day.
Yeah, well, dry track and the rail where it was advantage on the fence and up on the speed a bit. And then, as happens during the day, they started going real quick in the races, and you could start to make ground a bit wider if you had the right run in transit. So,
looking at that program, say, when do you start looking at that program, Snowy?
Friday.
And I mean, if you see a program like that, do you go, well, I'm excited about this program, or this is just another day? Oh, you've been ground down. It's kids in form, isn't it?
I've been worn down.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm yelling into my microphone. I get excited. John, what about you? Because you've got a slightly unusual position as a rider's agent. I guess you're like having a long lead time into this meeting.
Yeah, so I kind of know what horses are going to go there a bit earlier than most probably do. But when it's a rail position like this on a track like this, I'll probably get into it as early as possible, because I probably bet a lot more early into early markets on this sort of thing where I've got a bit more confidence than, say, if it was a Randwick meeting, I'd tackle it a bit later. And
you mentioned the rail position. How was that? How did that influence your view?
If mapping races early is probably the first thing you do straight away, and trying to find horses you think are going to get to the right positions to take advantage of this sort of. I try and find leader behind leader sort of situation, a bit like Harold Park, and bet from there, see if they've missed anything early, and then I'd probably back off it a bit and go back later in the week and tackle it again.
All right, so how do you find approaching the form that way? I mean, are you excited to be able to say, I think I've got an edge here?
Especially this time of year, I'm excited because it's a track that tends to play extremely consistently, where the rest of them, even Canterbury, even though last week it probably was like it has been, it's been a bit funny, and Randwick's been...
I found that Rosehill's the only really predictable one lately.
Yeah, and that was like it held up again, and you breathe a sigh of relief after the first race still, because you don't know whether they're tinkering with the tracks, but the guy at Rosehill seems to be really consistent. He seems to let them work on the track consistently, which keeps the track consistent, and I don't know what the secret is.
Maybe he leaves it to God.
He does more, and I've been told he tends to work horses on the course proper more than other tracks allow, and that tends to keep it more even. I'm not sure if that's
I presume
true or not,
that you're not allowed to touch the course proper at Randwick. They're just
shit
scared the whole time.
Exactly, and so they should be, I guess, the way it's handling all the traffic.
So are there any of these Saturday programs? I mean, you mentioned Randwick, Snowy. We're all in fear and trepidation. They can be. It can be quite juicy in the sense that it's game on.
It's been really hard lately. Like, you've had heavy track 1 week and heavy track 2 weeks later, and then completely different surfaces, completely different types of horses handling it. It's a strange track at the moment. It's hard to bet there with confidence.
So we'll be back at Randwick this Saturday, and I can promise you there'll be a little shower on Friday, and we'll be...
Well, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, actually.
I almost prefer rain during the day, and then if you just open it right up, and then you're just looking for the gold trackers.
Yeah, that's it. It's hard to make ground, and just hoping for riders with a bit of initiative, maybe. I don't know. It's just...
Anyway, I must confess to I get a little bit spooked when there's a rail position that I'm certain will play a particular way. And I'll mention, say, Canterbury last Wednesday, when I know the rail goes back into the normal position, I know it's going to be rails in run, and that does my head in a bit, because I don't want to look for inside barriers. I'm happy if the leader is drawn wide, but other than that, I'm ducking and weaving, and I'm too focused on. I find myself too focused on the map.
On the map, yeah.
And losing sight of the horses.
That's why I find I try to not think about bias until after I've done the form first. I like to try and do it flat, think about it, and then you adjust for bias, weather, and that way, if you've got that base there at the start, when you do it at the start, then whatever happens during the day, whether it be bias or rain or late scratching or whatever it is, you can adjust to it quicker.
I think that's a sensible approach. Obviously, John, you mentioned like having an edge by
Well, that's a
having
regular.
good
I think
idea.
that like a regular meeting. That's exactly how I'd kind of tackle it. So say Cessnock today, rail out 3, Gosford rail out. They're the sort of meetings I probably attack a little bit differently because you know they're pretty savage, and then I'll go back and do it the other way. But
If I had John's bowler army, I'd get to it on Wednesday.
they're dwindling. Let me tell you, they're dwindling, and I'm dwindling.
just on that point, before we get into Rose Hill, in terms of getting on, we had Richard Irvine on a couple of weeks ago, and obviously Richard did a magnificent job in getting us to a minimum bet limit, minimum bet law.
My hero.
Everyone's hero, I think.
Everyone.
But where does the landscape stand? I noticed that Cinebet has rejigged as of last week, I believe.
I'm still getting the good limits. Seem to be cutting back on a few people from what I hear, but like I'm getting on well, and I think most punters are still getting on well. They're doing their best. It's a hard thing they're trying to do, but God bless them for trying.
Okay, and I think what I was perhaps mentioning was the fact that they've withdrawn from dynamic odds, because
that part, yeah.
I understand the dynamic odds is a bit almost mafioso in the sense that it's.
But they know that, and that's kind of who they're trying to cater to as well. So it's a bit of a 50-50 funny one. I don't know who else they're possibly catering to.
It didn't make sense to me, because it seemed like they want turnover, they want to hold money for a smaller margin. And if you're off, like for me last week, my bets went right down with them because they were off the radar.
And punters who are betting with them to win 5 can get on for 5 anywhere else that aren't using dynamic odds. I'd say more often than not. So it's a funny. Maybe someone's just tried it for a couple of weeks. I'm not sure.
Well, yeah, but I think the inherent in the management at William Hill is the fact that they get offside with that type of scenario. And I mean, the race clubs with RaceNet, it was the same sort of deal. You know, Ed Grafton was decided to pull the pin there at one stage, and there's some South Coast tracks that have.
One of them doesn't do it.
Look, it's a tricky business, and really, I think that the racing regulators could actually be the providers in this sense. I mean, perhaps not let or sort of have an industry set up. Obviously, we've got an organisation like Dynamic Odds that's attempting to carve out a huge niche in the marketplace, and they've done a great job. RaceNet the same, but I mean, really the racing industry itself could have its own exchange, could have its own form provision, could have its own odds collector.
Well, given that there was a betting ring on track, it's now Dynamic Odds is the new betting ring.
Yes.
You used to stand in the betting ring and watch the flux. Now you stare at the computer screen watching the flux. Like, without Dynamic, it's very hard to operate. Like, there was a race on Saturday. I think I marked Vaucluse Bay $15 or whatever, and I wasn't keen on the race, but had gate 1, yada yada yada. And
You did well, yeah.
I've set the alarms when I've sent the prices out at 11 a.m. and I go through and I set alarms on runners I could be interested in, and started dinging Vaucluse Bay, and I had 2,100 twice on it, and all of a sudden it starts $12, and I lay 100 back, and that's all I've done in the race. And just something like that you couldn't do it. No. Without Dynamic. Right?
It is. Look, it is a great resource. I mean, obviously I've mentioned that it's a little bit problematic for certain areas of the market. But let's talk about that Vaucluse Bay race, because we had a situation where our bit Sam everyone knew how it was going to play out.
Maybe not as it played out. Yes.
Like, he's ridden sensationally all day, and he's such an underrated rider, and I love him. So I hate even mentioning this, but it was a shocking ride. Like, he went way too.
Well, it was kind of Sam Doubt over racing with him over racing, kind of pushed it.
He then went a bit early as well. Like,
but isn't that the problem of drawing when you're a leader drawn inside?
100%.
You're just
like Sam Doubt,
something is just going to be there. That's you haven't sort of controlled them from the beginning and said, no, this is where you are.
I think Hippo's in the position too at the moment where he's got beat on a few gays where he's taken a sit, so he has to be positive.
It's got to be hard,
and then he just. She'd rather see it get beat like this a lot of the time, and doesn't want to see anything get beaten, obviously, but she would rather see it go down like that than take a sit, be unlucky. And
all right, so if you were riding this horse, what would you do?
I have to be positive early if I'm Hippo, and then I just hope that Josh comes across a bit softer and his horse relaxes and we have it between us.
So, but do you think that Josh was just hoping that he might be able to bluff him out of the lead?
Well, I think he had to have a sniff of the front. I'm not sure what his instructions were with the 2 in the race, and obviously being more positive with Sam.
Our viewers are expecting that you know the instructions.
Well, I don't this time because I wasn't there, but and I jacks away. But I would say that Sam Doubt is they prefer to lead on it, which would help both horses. So it makes sense for them to at least have a shot for the front, and one and they've had a shot. It's probably not come back under Josh, and that's
All
how
right,
it's happened.
so should Hippo have given up? Maybe given it up. Could he have controlled the race better by handing up?
And then pop off.
In hindsight,
and
probably.
then saying, well, because it's he's had 3 or 4 days to look at his options. Obviously, he's ridden super on the card all day. Okay, where to for Arbit Sam? Because he looks to have put in an amazing performance.
I don't know what.
Couple of weeks off.
Like,
Just to relax.
I've never had a huge opinion of the horse, but that was a ridiculous run. I know it was only Vaucluse Bay that beat it.
And it had a lot. It had that fence, and they all sort of 1, 2, 3, 4 the fence. Of I think Walk the Streets came off. Third was 5 back the fence, so they were all fence. But
yeah, there you go. You got that's right. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 are the rails in run there. So, I mean, Vaucluse Bay has had a birthday, but Snowy, you spotted that he was potent in that race because of his likely position.
No, it wasn't something I was particularly keen on. It was just seemed like big odds given where it would be.
And Collett was never going to go left.
Exactly.
He was always going to. So it kind of made sense.
And given you knew the profile of the favourite, what sort of price were you thinking was the right price for the favourite?
No, like I've gotten the favourite wrong because I think I marked it $7 or something. $6.
And John?
I think about $5 similar, but I liked how it was going. I liked Gay stepping up. I just thought that there was a chance that it was going to get carved.
And repricing it after the race, what price are you saying? 5 to 2?
Yeah.
I was going to say.
Yeah, it's probably right.
6 to 4.
So that's an interesting area of like I would say that I'm a bit gung ho in terms of marking horses short, but I'm not gung ho enough to bet short. We've had a situation where we've had the disruptor in Gord come along to this show, and he's dead set. He's an absolute disruptor because we've all sort of grown up in this game, and we're going, oh well, you can't mark this horse that short, or you can't back it if it's this short a price. And he's going, no, I just want to back winners. And he's had a lot of success in the pointy end of the market, showing us the way, really.
Well, I was going to, like, it's interesting when you're talking about the minimum bet laws, and I started to write an article last week, which I'm kind of not allowed to publish because I'm licensed, which is okay. But all the decent, or the better judges, they're sort of getting pushed into that market, which seems to be the right ones seem to be getting even shorter, and people are chiming into prices that I'm still in that mindset of your mindset of I can't take those prices, but what do? Your hands are tied. You can't turn money over otherwise. So you're either chiming into marginal prices and fighting against the best in the business, or you're stuck and you can't turn money.
Surely
over.
most of the supply is down at that pointy end. Bookies are bookies. Like, oh, it's $2.50. I've got to stand this.
But then it takes one person like Bartholomew. One person on Betfair I'm talking about that just goes, I'm going to have 2,000 on it, and all of a sudden they've not laid a bet, and it's off the map.
That's the thing. They all scrape each other's prices. So when it goes off at one joint because of someone smart, they all can go off without laying it.
But that's like the betting ring used to be. Do you remember, Nath, when you first came into the betting ring?
Because you think you catch it shorter, there'd be a second wave.
P-cap, it'd be like turning it off, and then he'd be standing there going, I haven't laid this favourite. So let's talk about the horse in question on the program, Sir Plush, where at one stage 210 was laid on the fair. Now,
I had to get involved at that stage.
That's an amazing thing. I must say that I went into the betting on the race thinking, okay, this horse is going to be very dangerous because Collett's going to find third the fence, which Huey
screwed my map up. I thought. Like he would take a sit. The horse is better ridden with a sit, but this is probably one of those.
Especially when he got to a position where he could take a sit.
Well, this is one of those situations.
Could he? Or wasn't Huey just there?
I've watched it 27 times, and I reckon at the 600 he's in a position where and Tim's crossing him, and for whatever reason.
600, it's too late. But
it's not for him because he's travelled on the bit the whole way, and then it's only when he's sort of given him another kick to keep Tim out on top striker, and that sort of softened him up, I think. But they were obviously trucking along anyway. But he sort of added that extra bit more pressure when he's let it go again to hold Tim out, and that was kind of.
I think
that was interesting, wasn't it? That was interesting. I'm going to maintain my position here.
Well, he'd found his spot. That's right, and then Tim was going to give him the cover that you think that horse needs. It's just a push button horse.
Well, outside lead. You're not going to take 210 if you imagine it's outside lead, are you?
No, that's not the horse. That's not what he is.
I understand him wanting to be positive because of the way the track was, and being in one of those situations where, I back top striker thinking he'll cruise across and sit outside, no dramas. And I totally understand, Collett wanting to kick up and everything
and jam him a little bit, but yeah.
But I think it got to a point where it was too late to take a sit.
Well, he'd already jammed Top Striker. Top Striker was stuck there. He doesn't have that speed that he used to have to get there.
At that point, though, should Timmy maybe say, "I'll sit here"?
Well,
half a length off?
Timmy now goes, well, yeah, but he thinks Collett's going to take the sit.
He's still thinking, I'm going.
He's thinking, well, I'm going to get across because Collett wants to sit on this horse.
All right, so isn't this a feature of what began to happen on the day? We saw Hippo go, I'm drawing 1 on 9th Legion, but I'm going to hold the lead.
I'm still trying to work out what happened there.
But I mean,
it's that.
Yeah, it does, and that was a funny setup.
But aren't
too,
they also making judgments based on lower grade races earlier in the day? And we see this at the provincials all the time, where maidens, you know, it's very easy to declare a leader's bias when you've seen 3 maidens.
The first 2 races they went pretty slow.
Well, we'll talk. The first race, obviously, you come out and you say, well, maybe it is, and maybe it isn't. They've sat 1st and 3rd, but they're dominant. Then everyone looks like. Well, to me, the betting in the 3rd says everyone thinks maybe it's a fair track because Insensata's come from last.
Well, how did she do it?
Just 10 on them.
How did she do it? I realise they're broken down and beaten up, and Girl Sundays, Gerald Ryan.
Yeah. Dry track, soft lead, track like that, it's done.
You had horses that couldn't run the trip, and it was the right race for Insensata, and I actually...
Look, Insensata's flying, but so's Maraquita.
Yeah, we won't talk about that.
Well, we're not talking about that for next time?
No, I think that was its Christmas. It just was given little chance of winning the race.
But it's one of those, I know it can work from gate 1, but those blouses, aren't they always better off drawn wide and just go back and ridden for luck?
Not always. Not always. I think if you're, say this horse, like say you're gate 1 or gate 9, you can settle 3 lengths closer with doing the same.
Yeah, it's not so much lead. That's correct. Yeah, sort of.
Like you can settle 3/4 of the way back instead of last, and then I much prefer my horses coming through them than round them on the turn. Like I don't want to be the widest on the turn ever. So I'm happy.
Not at this track for sure.
I'm happy with the right jockey coming through them.
And yet on the point of the turn, there's Insensata last on the outside. Like she's 3 wide.
She's just flying.
So she should just be put in anything.
We had a little chat room thing we started, and the guy said, "Oh, well, that surely means it's a good track, or it's got 5 on it." And it was straight away, "Well, it's got 5 on it."
I didn't think it could win the way the race was going to be run, the way I thought the track would be playing, and it just went like a rocket.
But then it seemed to be when the only leader in the next race goes from $6 out to $12 that everyone thought it was a fair track.
Well, the other thing is that I could find Buddy honest, but I keep thinking about his life before he had blinkers on, and the other thing that anything with Saturday Warwick Farm is not proper Saturday, even if it's highway. You know, it's like it's not a.
This time of year, it's a little bit closer, but I agree. Yeah, it's just.
So anyway, Buddy Honest to me appeared to get his birthday on Saturday.
Well, it settled much better. She was much more patient on it. Yeah.
I gored over the highway races because I don't.
I live for them.
Like, I don't like them, but I was just interested watching the market because I knew what the map would roughly look like.
Yeah.
So I was watching things and I found it strange.
Well, I chimed into 750 thinking that was going to have to shorten considering just the map only, and then when it got to $12, I was like, this is weird. This is just doesn't make sense, but.
So coming back in distance didn't bother you in terms of him finding the front?
I like bush horses back in distance on like drawn wide on a leader. That's kind of one of the secrets I look for, sort of thing. And it's just probably that rider I was a little bit, because if it was a rider change to a stronger rider, I would have been even more excited. But when she sort of struggled to restrain at the start before, it was a bigger query. But it still seemed to be
what's the secret to Rachel Murray riding all these winners this year?
I'll leave that one for Nathan.
I don't watch as closely as
well, then you know as much as I do.
You mean she's riding in areas that you have less to do with, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
She's extremely patient. She rides in an area with average cattle, and she just seems to have mastered putting her horse in a position where it does the least work and picking up the other horses
There's a lot
late.
to be said for that.
And she leads on them and wins. When they're fast horses, I don't know how, she just seems to sit on them the same way.
Well, Sensicata made her look good on Thursday.
And she that did know what, and she tracked in. It was incredible. I was like, and I looked at I was a little bit surprised, you know, when I didn't really look at the meeting too hard, but I was a little bit surprised. She doesn't fight her horses. I guess that's the secret. And when she just seems to win on, she doesn't do what others do in the same area she does, and she's ridden 110 winners or something because of it. It's incredible.
Isn't it? It's amazing. And on the subject of these highways, John, I always sort of imagined we would get better country form in these highways.
the country's really weak for mine at the moment. I just think you used to get the open class sprint. You're looking at sort of class 2s and class 3s all the time, which kind of restricts it, but there doesn't seem to be that many horses coming through the country, even into city stables. Like I think there was every now and then like a Shiraz or something pops up, but they just don't seem to be popping up. I don't think the strength is there. And yeah, and the open, there's not that, even the open class sprints, they're all 50 starts, 5 wins. There's none of these horses that have won 7 or 8, so they're not horses that are good enough to come through these races. And now they're cutting out Canberra.
So do you know what has happened there? And
I did. I think there's an email later on that I got sent to me at the same time as you obviously got sent to you, and it's kind of, it says, well, we're looking at it, but we don't know. And then 2 days later, it was announced that they're taking them out. So,
really sure. They see the highways as a plaything of Racing New South Wales. They can adjust the conditions to suit themselves. It's not, we don't want to set the rules here, we're going to make the rules.
Yeah, and they're kind of in a position, like Canberra, like Matthew Dale's obviously doing very well. They can't really have a provincial series because I guess they'll think that it'll be dominated by the likes of the Newcastle trainers, so Kimwar, Lees, it'll be just a benefit. So they're kind of tired, and now they're sort of shrinking it.
But Canberra haven't, like, I mean...
How many, there would have been 5 runners, was it on Saturday if there was no Canberra? I think it was 5 or 7. I think it was 5.
All right, well, the highway certainly lived up to its reputation as being an on-paces race, battling away there. Let's go back to the first, where this very, very expensive yearling came off what Glenn thought was a well-suited win at Newcastle.
Did you say?
We had a viewer asking about these acronyms.
You'll have to put up a little thing on there.
Oh yeah, like it was that. Yeah, I think.
What did he say? What was OG? It was
1 goal. Wasn't it?
Oh right, yeah. Sorry, I'm
OGPR or something, wasn't it? Yeah, well, OGPR.
All right, so Mr. Danny, we've hopefully settled that one for you. But it's one of those. So Glenn was offended by the fact that both favourites had perfect runs in their lead-ups. But I suppose looking back on it after the first, a race where you lead all the way is not as perfect a run as a race where you get to sit in the perfect spot, or am I?
Depends how quick they go, I guess. But, it was just like they did have perfect runs last time, but they were always going to get them again. That was the thing. And what was in the race? Condor, Stone, like.
And they weren't going to get the run.
Exactly.
Yeah. So.
But everyone's going to get very excited about the Siege of Quebec now. Are we entitled to?
I think they're both nice horses.
They're both 6 to 12 months away. It's hard to really. So I just want to see them both come back next preparation. But they're obviously, I'd like to own both of them. They're both on the way up, and
I think they're both good horses.
And nothing behind them?
No. Oh, Tennessee Tango got a bit of time for.
I must say, she's been overachieving to buggery, Tennessee Tango, and she was sort of bursting out of the gates there on Saturday. I'm thinking
really fresh. Well, Josh rode it last start, and they were always of the opinion it needed sort of a mile. And when it won, they were obviously surprised, 100 to 1 or whatever it was. And then this race kind of jumped in because it had to after last start. So she sort of jumped the gun from there. She's probably 6 to 12 months away as well. So I wouldn't be sacking her. And I don't. The thing that was 150s, I kind of half liked on Saturday, and it had gate 2 and ended up 6 wide.
I know. It did a really good job at its second start, didn't it?
Well, it jumped and he just everything kind of went wrong for it. And if it dropped back in grade, I'd be pretty excited to.
All right. So when you say 6 to 12 months, well, what are you doing with these? Because obviously they'll be all racing in the next 12 months. So
yeah, I'm saying next preparation is where they're going to find out how good they are. These races, like they're 2 horses that look like they could definitely keep. They're right on the up, calculated. I don't think this was kind of in its original plan either. Just looked like a race they threw it in, and Siege of Quebec's just a horse that looks like he's just perfect with Gay stable. He just looks like a Caulfield
Guinness. It's a Gay
horse.
classic, isn't it?
Oh, it looks like one of those horses that will keep finding when challenged.
Yeah.
And do you want to leave that rider on?
Well, he'll be gone.
Yeah, of course he'll be gone.
He'll be gone.
On that,
Abdallah.
Love Tommy. Brent will be back on.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Well, remember how long ago was it, Nate, that you and Glenn had the gun T-Berry?
Years ago.
It's a long time ago, I know. All right, so we shouldn't talk about Tommy because he's going to be not around.
See you, Tom.
The first 1200 metre race, Hippo came back in distance on Pick Me Up, found the P spot there, and and got the job done. Is there anything to take out of this race?
That's how you have to ride the horse, and you rode it perfect.
But I suppose a clever map maker, which I didn't necessarily see, would have just seen it just going blop. There it is, rails midfield.
And gate 1, Courtney Vanderworth stablemate, to make sure they spread out a bit early.
Yes.
And
she did sort of kick up a bit longer than expected.
Yeah, exactly, which made Clear the Beach work. Mana's 3 back, 4, so they're just fence again.
Yeah, I was on Mana thinking get a
similar, yeah, so then when Hippo found its back.
So was Iron George supposed to find the fence? Because I looked at the betting, mid betting, and I'm going, it's solid as a rock at $19.
I couldn't find Iron George, but that's all I assumed.
With Rachel on it, you kind of knew she was going to dig it, and they
so
really loved digging that
box
horse.
seating, is it?
Hopefully, yeah, that kind of would have been their plan. They would have thought they could cross King Darcy, I would have imagined.
So speak to me about the favourite, Faith's Encore, who's jibbed out of the gates. She's just gone back to the tail on the rails.
Gave it every hope since from there. I thought.
Was she entitled to be liked before the race? I realise it was a scuzzy field. I realise it's a shitty sort of...
I think you remember how the quick backup used to be one of the big market movers? I think Bleeder's first up is the new quick backup.
Well, it was Nestic Raj with the 2 for me that mapped terrifically. That I was like, well, how are these horses in the betting? Why aren't they 10 to 1 plus? I couldn't find either of them, and what they would have had to do to win both of them. Yeah, they were the 2 runners on the day. I couldn't.
All right, so where to for Faith's Encore? Because she's sort of had excuses on Saturday, but is it a good enough race?
She's a rubber stamp midweek horse at the moment that needs to improve to get back to this grade, sort of for mine.
And
nice horse, but yeah, the whole bleeding, I think it would have been pretty wound up. It was scratched from a race before this, I think.
Was their plan to lead? Is that what they come out? I don't know. Is that what you said?
No, I'm saying it was scratched.
Oh. Yeah,
the week before or 2 weeks before or whatever.
So
Scratched from Randwick, I think.
Oh, okay.
I think they had all their eggs in the basket first up. So.
And Clear the Beach, is he sunk now? He's deep into his prep.
I thought he went super.
He did go well.
Yeah.
I think.
Apparently he got his tongue over the bit there, that 1400, so it wasn't as bad as...
Okay, well that's the other thing. Kanachi,
Kanachi,
I didn't hear a change of tactics. Kanachi was, well, I believe the change of tactics weren't explicit at Randwick, but they were supposed to be that this horse is going to be ridden to lead. So I didn't see any urgency from Kanachi coming back in distance the other day.
It was the fly in the ointment horse before the start of the race, especially for Clear the Beach.
I thought he'd be hunting forward, especially...
Yeah, I thought he'd cross the horses inside him easily, Clear the Beach, and that sort of turned out the fly in the ointment. It was a bit funny that turned out a similar sort of speed that was expected, but not from Kanachi.
All right, so does this all point to the fact that we just sort of found the winner? I mean, I didn't find the winner. Maybe you guys did, but...
I saved on. I got $7, and again, one of these dynamic alerts, when the 850 started disappearing, I had enough to save on it, but...
I just have a huge respect for Tim Martin, and I've been waiting for that horse to go back in distance because I don't think it runs anywhere near the 1500, and he had a couple of goes at it. It had run well and peaked, and I just sort of...
All right, so it's been the tail on the donkey for you.
It was a bit, yeah.
Mana was the real result for me. Mana pre-race, I thought.
I need the money more than you, so it was all right.
We spoke a bit about the Sir Plush Washington Heights race before, mainly in relation to Sir Plush Washington Heights. Where do we go to with him? Did he just get a? But did he? He got.
Yeah, he had every possible. He rode it perfect, but.
Well, he had every possible, but he's still
gone super.
412 days off a 740 trial. I know it's Gerald Ryan, but still, it's just a huge effort.
That's a better Washington Heights than we saw in his previous incarnation, isn't it?
I thought he was like. I remember he trialled on the same day as Hallowed Crown as early 3-year-olds, and I remember, I want to be on these to win the Golden Rose, and I've backed
Washington Heights for your nosebleed.
At the 50s, and then I've looked around and seen the only joint bet in 50s Hallowed Crown was somewhere I couldn't get on with, and everywhere else was 30, so I let it go. And actually, Washington Heights never even made the race.
Oh, this is a little wound that we've reopened here, isn't it?
Yeah. Hopefully, you got some back.
Of course, I thought, I remember he and Nostradamus were going to save the world at the same time, weren't they?
That's right.
Does anyone remember Nostradamus?
I thought even though it's had the perfect run, that was not a race for the faint-hearted. So I'd be a little bit worried about him next time, just because that has to hurt him.
Second, I think there's a worry, but
that has to hurt him. But it's
also, I can imagine. So I'm channeling Stewie here, going second up off the monster break. Oh.
I'd almost turn it out and bring it back to the spring if it was mine.
Okay. Not a bad
I'm
idea. I
interested
mean,
to see where they
I
go.
do like the resuming off the long spell, short campaign, and then next
Find out
campaign.
how well we're going. Okay, we're going well enough to worry about a better race.
There are a few money munchers in there, ins and outs.
What about when it loomed up? I was like, what's going on here?
Well, he didn't let you down, did he?
Not late. No, not late.
Top striker obviously had,
good.
yeah, he had serious excuses in the race, and
Next time.
He's just not bouncing. Like, you've just got to find the right race where he can cruise
I think
somewhere.
inside draw, just tagging. I think it'll suit him.
Yes.
Better.
the feature event on the day, the Winter Stakes, it looked a hell of a lot like the race that Slightly Sweet sat deep on the speed and ran third to Royal Tudor. In the end, we had a 6 metre rail that day, and that was the race where the race shape gave the running line the opportunity.
Which is what's happened
That's
here.
exactly what happened. Like, so I don't think there'll be much form out of the race. They're all sort of bunched. They're all.
There was a lot of queuing in the race, wasn't there?
They're all sort of.
Well, it's funny that they're all 20s and they're all in the right spot, but they're still probably the horses that, because they weren't suited this day.
The first two are the only two that you want out of the race.
Well, it's going to an 18 next Saturday, I think, at Randwick, which has to suit it better than
Who's that man of his word?
Man of His Word.
And same rider?
Part owned by the great Johnny
I
Drew.
can't tell you there.
Oh, Johnny Drew's is in this horse.
Great man.
Yeah,
Pick a later, Johnny.
I'm not sure. about
Ornament
the
to the game. Okay, so he's going to 1800 man of his word. I recognise that that's his style.
Slightly sweet. I unloaded on it last start. Didn't have anything yesterday.
It's the horses
couldn't
you
have
looked at and go, well, they're going well, but how can they win?
That was it. I just couldn't have.
But it's all about price, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
she's won the lottery in a sense. She's been going well enough to take advantage of her good fortune.
Yes.
She's fine. Like everything from his stable is fine. But she's.
Oh, she found the back of the right horse. Like Burning Passion's gone like a rocket. Probably should have won.
Yeah.
And she's tagged it and flopped over the line, exactly. But I still don't want to knock them. You know, in a race where you'd probably usually want to knock these horses that have fallen in tight margin race, they're probably going to find a race next start that's even better
Well,
suited
in
to
2
them.
weeks' time, we have the 1500 metre Winter Championship final, or whatever. You know, it's a bodgy, but it's going to have this feed, but perhaps fewer horses. You know,
Yeah, well,
we're 13 there. We might get 9 or 10, maybe.
Yeah, and you would. There's a few that don't want to stretch out, a few that we're going to go beyond that.
Yeah, you
Classic
think
uniforms.
Classic Uniform wanna go up.
He's going 2 weeks. Is that race? I think he's going 2 weeks, and he was a sneaky little run there. I wasn't going to. Yeah, he was an interesting.
Well, it's hard. Yeah,
his first 2 runs have been back. We won't talk about that one either.
But the difficulty I have with that is I see those horses working without cover in those races, and I'm going, but hang on, all the horses underneath you are having to wait, and they're just not getting their opportunity. You know, these horses are going as fast as they're allowed to go as fast as they can.
I think he's more, for me, he was just 11 to 14 that day, and that wasn't his race either.
Especially with the change of instruction, but yeah, he just couldn't get there early, and unfortunately it was planted, which from the gate was always.
Well, the Hippo just went, I'm
He
taking the
changed
lead.
the whole race. Yeah, he changed the whole race.
Yeah, I suppose that's the nature of open grade, isn't it? It's luck's a fortune.
That's a lot with a lot of the top, the better class racing. You often find there's not much between them.
Yeah,
No.
Yeah, well, they've all made it, haven't they?
Luck in running. You know.
Yeah, so those races
right.
need, unless there's an absolute guaranteed race shape, those races need to be wider, don't they? Your favourite needs to be longer in those races, which it already is. But
Yeah.
I was splitting Gold Sinking, like, you know, he looked to be going fine behind him, just had no luck. He wasn't poor.
Yeah, if he gets the same run as the winner,
Exactly.
he wins.
Just a
Yeah,
victim.
it's just one of those races.
yeah, where he's 2 out instead of being 3 out, because 3 out gives you the opportunity to wind up.
Mind your own business.
The penultimate saw 2 horses on a 7-day backup come back from 2400 and fight out the race. You won't often see that, will
With
you?
Gavel kind of made more sense because he'd had the break before the previous run, whereas Collateral doesn't. But it's just airborne. It probably should have won by a lot further than it did. It was incredible that it had no momentum, back from 24, stuck in behind them, only gets a run with 150 go and runs away from them. It's just not normal.
No, it was by far the best win on the day, or not best win on the day, but just like it was most
Superior to those horses, yeah.
And,
Right, so why was it $8 race morning, like at 11 o'clock? Why was it $8?
I thought I wasn't a fan back in distance, backing up.
I wasn't
I
either.
wasn't a fan this deep in the preparation. I thought it might be.
But maybe this is its absolute go. Like 2000 is perfect for it, and 2400 is going to be a bit dicey.
Oh, we don't know after last time.
Yeah, well, for it to win first, to jump to 24 and win on that day when it was a really, you can't really, it's hard to say that it isn't.
Yeah, but the Hayes horse did a power of work in that race and boxed on and...
Yeah, I think they did jarred up at like the 800 that day. That was terrible, Epsom Hill or whatever it was called. It just next start, I think I'd be... I think the race was poxy.
But its Victorian form was terrible.
Yeah, the race was
poxy.
poxy.
Over 2400, when he peeled out, I thought, you'll win by 4 here.
Yeah.
And he didn't ping like he did over 2000, so maybe...
Yeah, but that was his first run at 24 too. And then last week he did find the line a bit later than probably everyone wanted. But yeah, I agree with the $6, like $7. I couldn't understand why it was. I was talking to Tim in the morning. I'm like, mate, this horse is $4.60 to $7 this morning. What's going on? Has anyone rang you and told you it's missing a leg? And he's like, well, I can't work it out. He said, I think I'm going to be in a good spot. Like I don't see why Estic Raj is off the map and mine's out the gate. It just didn't make sense, but as it worked out.
Because the
Brian's going well.
Life of Brian is flying, isn't it?
I thought he got going a tad early, but
well,
what was in front of him wasn't taking him anywhere.
That's not his goal, is it? He's got to be in the first 2 or 3, and he's got to be there. Yeah.
Well, so on reflection, because I backed him at Canterbury, and I thought, well, you know, you just got everything right there. But on reflection, with these stayers, you know, box seat can be poison because they have to wait too long to make their run. And I suspect that that's what's happened there. What do we do with these pile of Waller runners? Like we keep seeing 5 and 6 Waller runners of, you know, the Springbok Flyers, the Multifacets, the Devil Hawks, the Ashcans. Well,
the only good thing is that one of them's not jumping out of the ground at 50s and beating you like they normally do at this time.
Like the rumour files, you know.
That's right. So as long as they're sitting back here, I'm happy for them to sit back there.
So they're being predictable. So you're happy? Yeah, okay.
At the moment, yeah.
Obsidian looks to have completely lost his way. He's just... He
looked like the first 2 runs he come back real good, and then...
Yeah, he's a funny horse.
Classic...
Fire similar, looked like he'd come back well early in the prep.
Absolutely.
Well, but isn't he a 1.5 mile horse? Isn't he? His return at 1500 said, look, when I finally get into a suitable race, which is not yet, he hasn't got any middle distance form. He's only got... Like, wasn't it 2,700 that he had to get to at Canterbury?
He sprints well, and then he can't go until he gets to 2,400. He's just a weird horse.
And then we saw a pretty poor collection about the last.
I don't want to talk about this.
Let's talk about the last.
Because this has got your name on it, hasn't it, Nath?
I marked it $17, haven't had a cent on it. I hated Flow, so one of the rare races on the day.
What is the key to Flow? Because I started out marking Flow like 10 to 1 because he's got this weird collection of form.
Just had no form. I didn't get it.
But he did have the run at Kembla 2 starts back, which admittedly was on a wet track, but it was like a huge win.
And there was a horse behind. I can't remember the name. There was a horse behind it that was deep. It wasn't a terrible field either. There was a bit of.
Well, it was a Class 3, so it was one of these weird Class 3 set weights races. So you had horses in there that were targeted at that race.
He was definitely suited with the run he had at the Sunshine Coast, which definitely looked an easier race than this.
Which is
previous start,
a weird thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and then it was heavily.
Like I hate off the interstate mid prep and back. It's never much.
Especially one run and back. Exactly not.
But I did determine coming to this race that T. Berry would adopt those tactics and that they would assist him in the race. And he's gone.
I didn't see it, and then I was a bit upset when he did, and then he went. Exactly, I was against him, but when he led, I thought he had a chance, and then they've just towed him. But apparently, he did parade very light. He was very light, so he'd obviously taken plenty out of him that trip, and that's his only excuse I can find.
Okay, so on that point, we've just seen a handover a week ago. What does anyone know if James had anything to do with these horses before day one, or?
So not speaking out of school too much, I did have dinner with him a couple of nights ago at a party and we're talking to him, and I think he's just in a feeling out period. You know, I think he's just still learning everything, and horses mid-prep he doesn't want to get too involved in because
so that's just leaving it to the machine.
Yeah, and that's not without him saying anything like that. I just, just him talking generally, he just seems to be getting a lay of the land from all the foremans, trying to get to know everyone, trying to get to know their culture, and it's going to take probably until horses come through their next preparation until he's got any stamp on them. Sounds
like a pearl, doesn't it? That we're going to be quite excited about a horse in that establishment that James Cummings has had from day one.
I'm looking forward to that personally. Yes, I can't wait till his preparation is behind the horse. Yeah,
he's done amazing things in his very short time, and personally, I couldn't see a reason. I could name 20 reasons why he wouldn't want the gig at Dolphin, and I could name maybe one reason why he wanted it, and that one reason is he wants to be the best, and you got to respect that. Like, he wants to be number one.
And every time he talks about it, it's talking about a career. Like he's there till he's no longer. There is no other thing for him. That's it. He just wants to train horses. He wants to win as many races.
I do think there's a certain lifespan at an organisation like that, but I just love the fact
he to me could end up anywhere. He could end up in the world. You know, he could be Aidan O'Brien.
Set up, you know, he had everything he needed at Randwick. Everything was going fine. He had no real need to take the challenge other than...
Oh, monetary wise, everything. He's got owners set up. He's got, absolutely says like...
competitive desire, I reckon, is what's lured him, and I really respect that.
And the ability to just train horses. No admin fee, not dealing with owners, not dealing with having to go to sales, not dealing with having to sell shares in horses, all those crazy things.
All right, so I imagine that aspect of being a trainer must be quite hideous. Unless you're born to do that sort of stuff.
Well, I'm dealing with them obviously on a daily basis, and not many of them seem like they're relaxed and have plenty of spare time. Like they all seem to be on the go all the time. Not, just seem to be quite edgy, and it's just definitely more about dealing with things rather than having a passion training horses, and that's all they get to do.
Yeah, so the admin and the sales aspect must have ground them down.
And someone like James, who seems an absolute perfectionist, I can imagine even if he had the best staff in the world, he'd still be wanting to make sure that everything was being done correctly, and he still wants to oversee everything. So he doesn't want all that other garbage, not garbage, all the other clutter getting in his way. I think that's probably why he's made the decision.
So turning that back to form students, what sort of future do you see for yourself, for example? Because, I mean, I imagine that you're in the same funk in terms of the daily grind.
Well, it kind of overlaps a lot for me too. So it's all the work that I'm doing is a good platform for doing the work with the boys. So I can naturally talk about the races they're in. I can naturally follow the horses from the races they're in. Like I want to do these reviews as early as I can because I want to chase the horses that have done well out of here that I think I can get on next start. So I'm sort of in an advantage to a lot of other people, and I love
you're
it.
Obviously prepared to work how many hours a week?
Plenty.
I don't
think I've had a day off in a long time, but I do love it. But it does drown you sometimes. You do seem to get stale for a few days at a time, and that would be the life of a trainer, I'd imagine too.
Well, Gord mentioned to me that he needed a break the other day. He was losing at Warwick Farm on the Wednesday. I need a break, so he didn't bet on the Thursday, but he's back on Friday.
See, I'm the same. I don't want to have a break.
Sometimes that's all you need. Like I honestly, you'll get grind along, get stale, and then I'll have 3 or 4 days off, doing nothing, not thinking about it. And by the 5th day, it's just like, all right, it's time to bet. You know?
All right, so
time to bet.
It's time to bet.
Yeah.
All right, so Snowy, you can maintain that sort of pattern for the foreseeable future.
Look, like I'm always working on little side projects, so I don't have to work as hard in the future if one of them comes off. But there's
love those.
Are they speculative or are they?
Obviously, yeah.
I'm still here.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's all the little projects I do are all based around doing the form, and it's like you said,
racing.
It's the base. It's whether it's doing maps for Brenton or whatever, I'm doing the work anyway. It's a way of earning more out of that. So
absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So how are you able to juggle that? Because I mean, I find myself a bit ruined if I've done a map for a race before I do the form for the race. Are you able to keep that to the back half of the?
I always start doing the map before I do the form for a race. So.
All right, and you're still able to retain your objectivity going back into the form.
Yeah.
Good job. You're a better man than I. Well, we might call it a halt to part one there.
I didn't get to talk about the last. I really want to talk about missing out on $13. $31. Sorry. You marked it.
And wait for it. I never play exotics anymore much, but when there's something that stands out like flow, I played a first 4, boxed up. I had 7 all boxed up, and then I thought, fuck Metallic Crown, I'll drop it out. And I've unloaded on Reneged in the race. And I'm just thinking, watching the race,
so you've got the ultimate torture there.
I see the 3 of them kick away, and I see Reneged and Metallic Crown fighting out from the 100. And I'm just like, well, you got.
And how does Reneged not go past Metallic Crown?
Yeah. It's just.
Well, but have any of those horses got any future? I mean, I thought Zon.
It's obviously does. That was not its right race. Like I'm talking from a set, like a 1250 in a maiden, fillies and mares. It was a horrible race.
It was the worst maiden you can come across
of all time. They've given it a terrible rating, which forced him to town. and you know, jumping to 1500
So is that-
at box
sorry, is
seat
that
and
what's
over
happening?
race. Basically.
So the handicapping department have.
Well, it got 65 or 66 or something off that win,
But
which
it's only
is-
had 3 starts. See, that's the problem. You know, if you're too lightly raced as a maiden winner, you
It's
come in
aggressive.
too high.
Yeah, that's it. So he's this looked the right race.
The yearlings you've bought, I'm imagining 5 duckheads.
Coonabarra brand. We'll be going to. Then we'll be going to. We'll be just Saturday Bob's races. We'll be following. Yeah. If they're a Group 1, we might start off in Kempsey or something. We'll aim high.
Yeah.
But, no, I think it was kind of forced his hand there. That wasn't his right race. Even though the fence was good, box seating probably is in its go, and it's probably the horse that definitely has quality to improve.
Fair enough. Zornkonig was completely unwanted. I realised that it had some.
Just that stable when they're completely unwanted like that, they're not
And
there.
when they're completely wanted, they are there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's a stable that needs to back winners, isn't it?
It's a big stable. I think that's my sort of thing. When you look at a big stable, it's very hard to hide
There's more leaks.
what's going on. That's right. Everyone needs to get fed, and it only takes 1 or 2 to push a price or firm a price, and that's pretty much what happens.
And 1 or 2 talking to the wrong person like you, and it's all over.
And then I tell you, and then you tell Glenn, and then whatever. It's just it spreads. Anyway.
It sure does. That's the end of part 1.